Greetings. By virtue of your presence watching this video today, I want you to know that we consider you to be an extended member of our family at Unity in Linwood. We believe that you are an individualized expression of that one creative impetus which stands behind all life, and as such we celebrate the uniqueness which you are, and we celebrate our unity with you. We are glad you're with us. Between Ken and Matthew, I feel like I've been to church already. Thank you for that. I'd like to start by saying thank you. Your generosity contributed over $500. Contributed over $500 each to food banks in Houston and South Florida. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for reaching into your greater world in meaningful ways. I'd also like to thank those who joined yesterday and contributed to the second of our fall cleanup parties. If you were among that noble collection of souls, would you raise your hand and allow us to thank you with a round of gratitude? And our Gala of the Year, our 2017 auction, is upcoming on Saturday, November 4th. 120 of us will gather. Reservations are still available today. It is selling out. We have 2 years of history as a capacity event, sold out in advance. Please don't wait until the last minute. It's a grand party. It features beautiful foods, lovely church-appropriate drink items. Including communion beverages? Is that what you... Thank you. Welcome to Unity. It culminates with a musical performance by Kansas City singing sensation Jerome Johnson, who's a dear, dear friend. Reservations are $40. We do hope you will join us in this grand celebration. We have been exploring an invocation as was offered by Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore before he would teach. You have been most kind and most indulgent. Let us explore it yet again today. You may repeat after me if you are comfortable doing so. His words read as follows: I am now. I am now in the presence of pure being. And immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. I acknowledge your presence and your power. O blessed Spirit. In your divine wisdom, now remove my mortal limitations. And from your pure substance of love, bring into manifestation my world according to your perfect law. During each month of 2017, we have introduced one of the 12 powers as taught by Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore as being active, alive, and in development within each of you. He further taught that each of these 12 powers has something of a geographic or energetic center within the human body. I have to tell you yet again that I really don't get that. I really just don't relate to it, but welcome yet again to Unity, where I don't have to believe everything they say, you don't have to believe everything I say, and when we're all done disagreeing, we'll get together over really good coffee in Friendship Hall. You see, Unity is not a movement of conversion. Unity will not seek to convert you from any one thing to any other thing. Rather, Unity is a movement of education. So as a teacher with no small amount of experience, quite frankly, I would rather that you question and challenge, and yes, at times, I mean, not at this time, but at generic times, disagree with me, rather than to blindly and mindlessly accept every word that flows forth from these lips, because it's when you question and challenge, and yes, at times disagree, that I know that you are truly engaged in that process of spiritual soul growth, development, and unfoldment. I might go so far as to say that the blind and mindless acceptance of every idea presented by religious voices, educational systems, political leaders, media sources, childhood influences, whatever, is always part of the problem. But I digress. As I was saying, Mr. Fillmore taught that each of these 12 powers has a geographic or an energetic center somewhere in the physical body. So if you would like to embark upon something of a 10-month review, you are welcome to stand. You don't have to. You're welcome to stay seated and giggle at the rest of us. And we begin with faith, which is thought to be located somewhere in the center of the head. So together, we acknowledge faith. And in the small of the back is strength, wisdom, and love, power where we speak. Do you love that? Imagination, the ability to see beyond present circumstances into a grander possibility, and understanding and will, which brings us to the power of order, which is located in the navel. Now, at this point, I will not ask that you demonstrate the location of order. For the last thing I want is for a picture of a couple hundred people at Unity to appear all with their fingers in their belly buttons saying, oh, this is what happens at our church. And the same will hold true in the last 2 months of the year when we explore the powers of life and elimination. But again, I digress. You're welcome to have a seat. And so it is that this month we arrive at the 10th of the 12 powers. It's the power that he referred to as being zeal. It's taught to be seated in the back of the head. Seated in the back of the head. And about this power, Mr. Fillmore wrote, and I quote, "The great universal impulse that lies back of all action is enthusiasm or zeal. Zeal is the mighty force that incites the winds, the tides, the storms. It urges the planets on its course. It spurs the ant to great exertion. Zeal and enthusiasm incite to glorious achievement in every aim and idea that the mind conceives. Zeal is the impulse to go forward, the urge behind all things. Without zeal, stagnation, inertia, death would prevail throughout the universe. The man without zeal is like an engine without steam or an electric motor without a current. Energy is zeal in motion, and energy is the forerunner of every effect." End quote. And how frustrating are those souls, perhaps you've met one or two of them in your day, who have all the wisdom for the world out there, but who lack the motivation to enliven that same wisdom in their own lives. These people can often be seen in beer-stained reclining chairs saying something akin to, if I were president. He continues, never repress this impulse, this force, this zeal welling up within you. Commune with it, rather, and praise it. At the same time, analyze and direct its course, for zeal alone is without intelligence or discretion as to results. You are not to repress it, but you are to guide it in cooperation with wisdom. And how frustrating are those other souls who have all the motivation for the world out there, but who seem to lack the wisdom to invest that motivation in anything life-affirming. And I don't need to remind this audience of those souls who invest tremendous enthusiasm in vehicles which would divide, vehicles which would demean, vehicles which would perpetuate suffering. Mr. Fillmore continued, zeal is the affirmative impulse of existence. Its command is go forward. So I think I represent Mr. Fillmore pretty well when I summarize by saying zeal is the affirmative impulse of existence. Its command is go forward, but go forward for that which affirms the beauty and the value of all life. How are we doing with that? If you'd like to talk about how the power of the month is showing up in your life, there is a discussion group. It will occur next Sunday following this service. I will host it this month. It will be held in my office. It's called Power to the People. I think that's a great name. And this is the third week in a series I've called Unity Talk. So far we've explored two words which meant certain things when we were sitting on the asbestos tile floors of the Methodist Church making macaroni messiahs, but which long for upgrades in the expanded understanding of adulthood. So far we've explored the word prayer, not as a religious ritual by which we beg God out there to do something, to create something, to change something, to fix something down here, but prayer as a spiritual technology by which we make ourselves available, attune ourselves, harmonize ourselves, if you will, to the givingness that is the very nature of the infinite potential which we call God. And we've explored the word consciousness, that sum total of beliefs, perceptions, and expectations, my definition, admittedly, that sum total of beliefs, perceptions, and expectations through which that infinite potentiality we call God must pass in order to become something in this material world. I think of it as something of a funnel, really. The large end of the funnel represents the limitless givingness that is the very nature of the infinite potentiality we call God, and the small end of the funnel represents what I would call consciousness, whether individual or collective. A flawed metaphor, to be sure, but I think it makes a point nonetheless. God's work in any prayer process is already done. God, in a sense, is that realm of things completed, and ours is to make a higher possibility welcome by expanding consciousness, by addressing that sum total of beliefs, perceptions, and expectations which we have assumed throughout life or throughout several lifetimes. I could say that if we want it in a spiritual sense, we must become it. We must embody it. If we want new possibility in a spiritual sense, we must attune ourselves, we must harmonize ourselves with new possibility. We can't pray for new possibility while we cling to the status quo. And if we want greater harmony in a spiritual sense, we must attune ourselves, we must harmonize ourselves with greater harmony. We can't pray for greater harmony while we shoot all who disagree with us. Ours is to move to the large end of the funnel, so to speak. And today we arrive at three new words. They're good ones. They're what I like to call the 3 Ds. What does unity do with the 3 big Ds of those asbestos tile floors in the Methodist Church? And oh, how such words haunted us as little boys and little girls, and even today, death and destiny and the devil continue to haunt us as not so little boys and not so little girls. I probably could have saved these 3 words for Halloween Sunday and done something clever, but I suppose I'll just have to trust that an infinite universe has enough clever ideas for more than one Sunday. So forward we go. I think like all words, death and destiny and this devil idea contain layers of meanings. On a very earthy level, I suppose death is somewhat real, as it's certainly experienced by the senses, and destiny is quite real as it's experienced as effect, and the devil is quite real as it's experienced as part of consciousness. On an earthy level, we're born into finite physical bodies. To be specific, Unity would be more likely to say that we build or we create these finite physical bodies. Nonetheless, we're born into finite physical bodies, which on an earthy level will one day die. And yet I'd like to ask the question, when I say you're born into a finite physical body, what or who is the you that's born into that body? And as I ask this question, don't you stumble into something of a recognition that the you that's born into that finite physical body is something or someone beyond the body which it built? Don't you intuitively sense that the you that's looking through your eyes on this very morning is something or someone that existed long before the experience we've labeled birth? Something that will continue to exist after the experience which we have labeled death? So on an earthy level, I suppose, we're born into finite physical bodies and death seems real. But from another level, as you begin to entertain the notion that the you that built or created that finite physical body is on an eternal journey of soul, growth, development, and unfoldment, you begin to entertain the notion that even the experience which we've labeled death might represent a soul's triumph over a physical body which is no longer capable of supporting its divine work. You see, in considering the enduring you, perhaps even the experience we call death shifts from being one of defeat to being one of triumph. I think it was Mary Elizabeth Fry who said it best. Don't stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry, for I am not there. I did not die. Oh, the artists and the musicians, boy, they have a way of expressing truth, don't they? And I think the same can be said of destiny and this devil idea, really. I mean, on an earthy level, there is a creative core to the center of you that is ever attracting you to mirror reflections of itself. And until you change that creative core of you, and Unity would remind you that you can change that creative core of you, that prayer and meditation, that affirmation and denial, that there are spiritual and even scientific tools for the alteration of consciousness, that until you do so, until you alter that creative core that spins at the center of you, you will continue to attract the same brand of mirror reflections of itself. Rabbi Ted something. He is something. Rabbi Ted also said something, and I don't think he will mind my sharing. It went something like this. He said, we've had the structures, the systems for racial equality in place for a long, long time. But until a consciousness capable of sustaining racial equality catches up, we will continue to struggle with race issues. One might surmise that this is why a lottery winner rooted in a consciousness of poverty will tend to find ways to return to an experience of poverty. They might even think that this happened to them, when in truth it's more accurately described as something that happens through. Or as I like to say every Christmas, there's a reason that the old carol puts comfort before joy. You see, it's not misery that's the enemy of soul growth, unfoldment, and development. It's mediocrity. After all, misery tends to boot us right out there on the path. But a comfortable mediocrity? You laughing at, boy? But a comfortable mediocrity tends to keep us stuck. So on an earthy level, destiny is real. But when we come to understand that our destiny is, in a very real sense, a product of the consciousness which we entertain, both individually and collectively, the shackles of destiny are as loosed as we choose to loose them. When a consciousness ample to sustain racial equality is achieved by enough people, the shackles to a destiny of inequality will finally give way. And when a consciousness ample to sustain healthy children is achieved by enough people, the shackles to a destiny of suffering will finally give way. I have to believe that when a consciousness ample to sustain religious harmony is achieved by enough people, the shackles to a destination of religious intolerance will, thank God, finally give way. I think that's why those who seek the counsel of psychics can relate. They've all watched the counselor peer into that crystal ball and say something akin to this. I have a clear picture of where you're going. But you can change that at any moment. You can change that at any moment. And I know I speak for a number of people in this room when I say that on an earthy level, the devil sure looks real. I say this in the sense that today's world is something of a battleground, the likes of which I haven't seen in any of my previous 52 years. And yet I don't really believe that the tension we recognize is a tension between gods and devils. I don't really believe that the tension we sense is a product of two cosmic forces, yet again battling it out on some cosmic gridiron for the possession of human souls. For we live, move, and have our being in a universe. We live, move, and have our being in totality, in wholeness, in entirety. We live, move, and have our being in one, not in two. Unity likes to say it this way: there is one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe, God, the good omniscience. Would you like to say that? I'll say yes. There is one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe, God, the good omniscience. So the tension we recognize must be a tension among humanity. I like to think that the tension we sense is a tension in an evolving human consciousness, a tension between a dying consciousness rooted in the relative experiences of separation and division, and a rising consciousness rooted in the higher realities of oneness and equality. I like to think that. I like to think that the tension we sense represents the desperate final gasps of that old consciousness. It was Unity teacher Dr. Emily Cady who explained it this way, and I do paraphrase: when a rising new consciousness bumps against an old error consciousness, there is a period of unrest. That everything in us which represents that old error consciousness seems to rise up and come to the fore, as if to say, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" It's like every time I go on a diet, pizza seems to go on sale. It's as if the universe rises up and says, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" So on an earthy level, I suppose this devil idea seems to be alive and well, but on a cosmic level, all we're really seeing at any moment is human ignorance coupled with human irresponsibility, followed by the inevitable desire to find someone, something, somewhere to blame. Now, why does any of this matter, you might be thinking? Is it merely a matter of semantics that we would explore these words? Are we simply arguing about words? And I would say absolutely not. I would say absolutely not, because a limited construct of death necessitates a limited construct about life. For to assess any life based upon a single incarnation is to conclude that life is, well, somewhat unfair, somewhat nonsensical. I might go so far as to say that the majority of the world's issues are born of this belief that we are aging bodies instead of eternal souls. Make this leap in understanding, and we solve the issues of race, we solve the issues of gender, we solve the issues of orientation, and so much more. And to believe that life is something that happens to us through some cosmic predestination, that we have no role or responsibility whatsoever, that we are nothing more than the victims of cosmic machinery, is to conclude that life is really quite pointless, perhaps even meaningless. But make this leap in understanding, and we come to realize that we have a hand in the quality of life the quality of life which future generations will experience on this very planet. And to believe that the devil out there is the true culprit for the shadows which plague humanity and the very spinning blue orb upon which we coexist is to conclude that life is, well, something helpless and something even hopeless at times. After all, to believe that the devil out there is the one who brings the shadows is to believe that only God out there can bring the light. Make this leap in understanding, and we come to accept that the very light which would eradicate the shadows of humanity's stumbling is a light which each of us must welcome. It's a light which each of us must embody, that the very light which would eradicate the shadows is the very light that each of us must bring into the world. We close this time of our morning with a period of quiet reflection. We might call it meditation from time to time. It'll last 3 or 4 minutes. If you're comfortable doing so, please make your body comfortable in whatever way suits you. You're welcome to take a couple deep breaths, to slow your heart, to uncurl your fingers, relax your eyes and your jaw. Let us embark upon a short time of communion in the only truly universal language, and that is the language of the soul. We discover it in silence. Let us avail ourselves to that. So I close my eyes, not that I would deny the truth, but that I might know something of a higher truth that transcends this world of appearances. And so I begin this short prayer by declaring, I am soul. I am soul. I am the infinite, limitless life of the divine expressing in the world. I am an inlet and an outlet for infinite potentiality that has neither beginning nor end. I am soul. I am limited by no history. I am limited by no precedent. My destiny is as close as my next choice. My destiny is as close as my expanded consciousness, as my bigger idea of the world in which I live. So I am soul and I am free, inalienably and undeniably free, by virtue of my existence itself. And there is nothing that stands against this. For in a universe of one, there cannot be two. And so I breathe that in, this emancipating consciousness of identity, of potentiality. And I allow it to bring me hope, to awaken peace, and to remind me of the love that stands beneath all of it. I close this divine argument, this time of treatment, this time of prayer with a few affirmative statements. I'll start by saying, well, and so I am. And so we are. Well then, and so it is. And amen. Thanks again for joining us. Please visit unityinlinwood.org for a preview of all upcoming classes, services, and events, and for an opportunity to make a gift to our community should you so choose. Thank you.